This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
The green light is on there. Okay, Bruchim Abam, welcome everyone. So my favorite time of the year, when we get to start the topic, the subject of Purim, Habaleinu L'Toiva. So this week's Shiur, we're going to speak about, of course, Purim, and especially Purim this year, because we know it's an Ibra year. And already last week we spoke about the ramifications of two Adars, and what is we know Mazel Adar Dogim, but what's the Mazel of the first Adar? And we said a very interesting idea, that there is an opinion that the first Adar is not even a month. That was the opinion of the Levush. We said a Shita of the Cheskuni, Rabbeinu Ephraim, that those who are born in Adar Sheni, that month has no Mazel. And then we brought from Yonis and Eibeshitz, and we brought from Rabbi Yitzchak Isaac Chaver, that the Dogim, no questions, no, afterwards. We brought from Rabbi Yitzchak Isaac Chaver and Rabbi Yonis and Eibeshitz, Cholontas Mazainas, yeah? That the Mazel Adar Dogim, the Dogim of Adar, is the Levyasan. Okay, so today, Rabbi Isai, we're going to focus on two lines in the Yerushalmi. Amazingly, you have a whole Masechta Megillah, and the Yerushalmi actually darshans a pasuk that the only Masechta that was obligated to be written was Masechta Megillah. The Yerushalmi actually darshans a pasuk. On the pasuk, it says, "V'zichram la Yosef mizaram," that the memory of Purim can never be ceased from Klal Yisrael. Mikan shekavu chachamim Masechta. So the concept that there's a Masechta Megillah is actually midivri neviim that there has to be Masechta Megillah. It's also a topic in and of itself. But we're going to focus on one line in the Yerushalmi. The Yerushalmi says, if you look at number 1, Rav Levi b'shem Rav Chama bar Chanina, Oisa Hashana Hoisa Mubaras. The year of the Purim miracle, it was an Ibra year. So that itself is a Chiddush Nifla. It's not something we could have known on our own. But the Yerushalmi is Megala to us that the year of Purim was an Ibra year, it was two Adars. Ma'ataima. Literally, Ma'ataima means what? What's the reason? Yeah? But we're going to see in the Perushim, Ma'ataima means how do we know? How do we know it was an Ibra year? So you say, well, how do we know? We can make a cheshbon. But there's no way to make a cheshbon because there's really no rhyme or reason. It's really 7 out of 19 years. So it's not like you can make a cheshbon exactly whether it's an Ibra year. Especially back then, there was a Bezin Hagadol in Yerushalayim. They were Mekadesh al Pi Re'iyah. So it's really not something that's calculable. Says the Yerushalmi, this is a very important line. How do we know it was an Ibra year? The pasuk says, look at number 2, B'chodesh HaRishon, in the first month, Hu Chodesh Nisan. B'shna shtei mesrei l'melech Achashverosh, in the 12th year of Achashverosh's reign. Hipil Pur, they made a lottery. Hu HaGoyrol, l'fnei Haman. And the lottery was miyom liyom, from day to day, to determine which day would be the most opportune time. Umei chodesh l'chodesh, in which month? But read the words, Umei chodesh, and from the month, l'chodesh shnei masar, to the 12th month, Hu chodesh Adar. That's the month of Adar. That's the month of Adar. So comes the Karban Ha'eda. We know on the Yerushalmi, the two most well-known Perushim are the Karban Ha'eda and the Pnei Moshe. Now the truth is, I saw today that Rav Moshe Feinstein wrote a Perush on the entire Yerushalmi. We don't have it. Rav Menachem Zemba wrote a Perush on the whole Yerushalmi. It was destroyed by the Nazis. So there are many Perush on the Yerushalmi, but the ones that we have most accessible, Rav Chaim Kanievsky wrote a Perush on the Yerushalmi. That we do have. We have the Karban Ha'eda. Karban Ha'eda was written by Rav David Frankel in the 18th century, on half of the Yerushalmi. You have Pnei Moshe, Rav Moshe Margolis. He lived from 1710 to 1780. He also wrote on the Yerushalmi. Now the Karban Ha'eda is a little bit more extensive than the Pnei Moshe is, but the Karban Ha'eda learns the Yerushalmi as follows. Again, one thing we know for sure, the year of Purim was an Ibra year. That means it was a year that had 13 months. But now the $1 million question is, okay, it was an Ibra year, but which month did the salvation of Purim occur in? That's the $1 million question. It was an Ibra year. But what month did Haman plot to kill the Jews? Was it Adar Rishon or was it Adar Sheni? Was that right? That's the $1 million question. Now, either way, it's going to be impossible. We're going to be up the creek without a paddle. You know why? Because if Haman decreed to kill the Jews in Adar Rishon, you know, I have a question. What month do we lay in the Megillah? Adar Rishon, Adar Sheni. We know we do Adar Sheni, but it's Machlekes Tanoim. Rabbi Glatstein, Rabbi Yossi holds that you lay in Adar Rishon. we're going to see in Mavir and Ala Mitzvahs. Reb Shimon Gamliel says you lay it Adar Sheni. Why? Mismach Gula Legula Adar. If we want to juxtapose the Gula of Purim to the Gula of Pesach, yeah? So we have one shita that says Purim is Adar Rishon. One shita that holds Purim is Adar Sheni. So if the month that Haman decreed to kill the Jews and we were saved from was Adar Rishon, then why would anybody say Lein the Megillah in Adar Sheni? It didn't happen in Adar Sheni. There's only it's sad to say to celebrate Adar Sheni if something happened in a Shana Pshuta, if something happened in a regular year in Adar. So what do you do in a leap year? Celebrate it in Adar Sheni. But if the miracle of Purim happened in a leap year and it happened in Adar Sheni, then why? If it happened in Adar Rishon, why would Hashem Gamliel say celebrate Adar Sheni? And if it happened in Adar Sheni, why would Rabbi Lezer Rabbi Yossi say celebrate Adar Rishon? Everybody agrees. There's a shaila. What month do you commemorate Yartzeit in Adar? The answer is Ashkenazim do it in Adar Rishon. But that's only if the person was nifter in a Shana Pshuta. If the person was nifter in a Ibriyar in the Adar Beis, everyone agrees you commemorate Adar Beis. And if somebody was nifter in Ibriyar and Adar Aleph, even Svardim who commemorate the Yartz in Adar Beis would commemorate Adar Aleph. So the question really is, whichever month Purim was supposed to be, there's going to be a shita that doesn't work out so well. So let's look at how the Karban Ha'edah learns. Look at number 3. Oisa Shana, that year, Shenasa Boy Hanes, that the miracle happened. The near the miracle happened, it was an Ibriyar. My taima koloimar minolan. How do we know? The answer is, it says, Miyoim liyoim umechoidesh lechoidesh shnei masar. Hu choidesh adar lamali. Meaning, I need to say, mechoidesh lechoidesh shnei masar uchoidesh adar. Just say the 12th month. Why does it have to say adar? Everybody knows adar is the 12th month. Just say, Miyoim liyoim umechoidesh lechoidesh shnei masar. Why say hu choidesh adar? Says the Karban Ha'edah, you read it like this. Hachi kamar. L'choidesh yud beis shebechol shana. This Adar is normally the 12th month. But this year, it's the 13th month. You hear how the Karban Ha'edah is reading the Yerushalmi? Why does the Torah have to say, why does the Megillah have to say, Mechoidesh l'choidesh shnei masar hu choidesh Adar? Why does it have to say Chodesh Adar? Everybody knows the 12th month is Chodesh Adar. It's to teach L'chodesh Shnei Masar, the 12th month, Hu Chodesh Adar. Normally Adar is the 12th month, but not this year. This year it's the 13th month, because this year the miracle of Purim happened in the 13th month. That's how the Karban Ha'edah learns the Yerushalmi. By the way, the Pnei Moshe also learns that year that Haman made the lots and the miracle happened. It was a Shana Mubaras, and there were 2 Adorim. And that's what it means, Umei Chodesh l'Chodesh, and the miracle happened in the 13th month. Comes the Munkatcher, obviously, in the Shari Saschar. In the Shari Saschar. Number 5, the Munkatcher.
I went one ahead.
You're always one step ahead, okay? So the Shari Saschar says that, he quotes Yerushalmi, that the miracle of Purim happened in Adar Beis. Well, first of all, it was in Ibriyar, and it happened in Adar Beis. And he says, but how does the Yerushalmi know it happened in Adar Beis? So he says, they're going to darshan the pasuk like this. Listen to the diuk of the Munkatcher. Mechoidesh lechoidesh. Hu choidesh Adar. It's an Adar. That's mechoidesh lechoidesh. That's 2 months. It's a year where Adar is mechoidesh lechoidesh. A 2-month Adar. When is Adar a 2-month Adar? When it's an Ibriyar. So frek the Munkatcher, so maybe it happened in the first Adar. How do you know it happened in the second Adar? He says, Adayin Tzrichen Lahavin, Me'ayin Neda, Me'akosav Azeh, that refers to the second Adar. No, you read it like this. It was Me'chodesh L'chodesh Shnei Masar. It was a month next to the 12th month. Which month is next to the 12th month? Adar Beis. That's the Munkatcher. He's trying to say pshat and how the Yerushalmi darshaned that it was a leap year and it was an Adar Beis. Mei chodesh l'chodesh shnei masar, the month next to the 12th month. So comes the Bnei Yissaschar. Now we're going backwards. Bnei Yissaschar was the Elta Zeda of the Shari Yissaschar, and the Bnei Yissaschar says an interesting thing, which his Einikel questions him on. He says, I heard that when Haman made a decree, he intended to make the decree for Adar Beis. So the Shari Yissaschar, the Munkatcher asks on a Zeda, what do you mean you heard, Zeda? It's a Yerushalmi. What do you mean you heard? You should know it. You don't have to hear where you heard it on the street. You're walking down the street and someone told you. It's Yerushalmi. So he's matmiya on the Zayda. Why didn't the Zayda say it's Yerushalmi? But be it as it may, the Bnei Yissaschar says there's a reason, there's a special hashgacha that Haman ended up making the decree for Adar Beis, and this is something we said last week. Because we said, I don't remember, anybody here born in Adar Beis? Eli Sisma, but he's not here. Nobody else. He went to take advantage. Okay. Nobody else? Not one person here was born in Adar Beis. Amazing. Well, his father. Whose father? Azriel's father.
Our father.
And Daniel's father.
My English like this.
Mazel tov. Okay. Okay, you should have sponsored, right? So, your wife is Zayin. All right, so you'll take in 3 weeks. Yeah? Okay, so we're set. Azriel, you're next week. Okay, so be it as it may, the Bnei Yissaschar writes that there's a hashgacha that Haman's decree fell out on Adar Beis. Why? Because we know if somebody's born in Adar Beis, they don't have mazel, which means they're not subject to kishuf. So Haman, who's a big mechashev, if he would have scheduled it for a regular month of the year, he would have been successful in harming Klal Yisrael. But the Rebbeinu Shalom manipulated that the decree should be for an Ibriyar, and Dafka Adar Beis that has no mazel, and this way we were protected. Okay, Rabbi Sai. So here we have the Shita, the Karban Ha'eda, we have the Shita, the Pnei Moshe, we have the Shita of the Shar Yissaschar, we have the Shita of the Bnei Yissaschar, explaining the Yerushalmi. The Yerushalmi says one thing: the year of Purim was an Ibriyar. The first pshat in the Yerushalmi is, what does it mean it was an Ibriyar? That it was decreed for Adar Beis. It was decreed for Adar Beis. Comes the Shal Chuvas Mari Bruna. Now who's the Mari Bruna? Mari Bruna was Kamada Kadmoin. The Ramah quotes the Mari Bruna. He's one of the Chachmei Ashkenaz. He's, we're talking about before the Ramah. And he says he disagrees with the Yerushalmi. The Yerushalmi cannot be correct. Why not? He says if it was an Ibriyar, then why, when Haman made his lotteries, did he only have 12 dice? He should have had 13 dice if it was an Ibriyar. And we don't find anywhere that Haman had 13 options of which month to kill the Jews. Now, how do we know how many dice Haman had, how many goyrolos Haman had? If we look in the Targumim, we find that Haman went through the months of the year, and we don't find him like cheshbening Adar Aleph, Adar Beis. That implies that there was one Adar, says Mari Bruna. But that's the first kasha. The second kasha, Mari Bruna, is mamish a bamba. You know what a bamba is? Who knows what a bamba is? Bomb. In the Olam HaYeshivas, if there's a starka kasha, it's a bomb. Okay, here's the bomb. Not a Rambam, but a bamba. The kasha is like this. The kasha is, and we asked this before, the Gemara Masechta Megillah Daf Vav and Beis, the Gemara brings Machlokes Tanoim. When do you lay in the Megillah in an Ibriyar? Rabbi Lezer Rabbi Yossi says Adar Aleph. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says Adar Beis. So the Gemara says, we understand the Machlokes because it says B'chol Shana V'Shana. So Rabbi Lezer Rabbi Yossi says, just like every year you lay in the Megillah the month after Shvat, so in an Ibriyar you lay in it the month after Shvat, Adar Aleph. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says, no, just like every year you lay in it the month before Nisan, and in every year you lay in it the month before Nisan. Yeah? Says the Gemara, Bishlama Rabbi Lezer Rabbi Yossi, I understand why you lay in the Megillah in Adar Aleph, Ein Mavirin al HaMitzvahs. But according to Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, why do you lay in Adar Beis? You lay in Adar Beis because Mismach Geula LeGeula Adif. We want to juxtapose Purim to Pesach. Frek the Heilige Mahari Bruna. I'll tell you the truth, Mari Makomis of tonight's shir I got from a sefer, Kuntris Leiv Toiv Mishte Tamid. I found the sefer about Adar Aleph Adar Beis. Okay, so this is where most of the shir comes from. Rabbi Yosef Alter Strenger. Yeah, a Chashvayid. Yeah, so he explains the Mari Bruna's Kasha Azoi. He explains the Kasha that if you're going to say, like the Yerushalmi, that the year of Purim was an Ibriyar, and Haman decreed Chas Hashem to kill us in Adar Beis, and we were saved in Adar Beis, then what in the world is the Pshat in Rabbi Lezer Rabbi Yossi, who says we lay in the Megillah in Adar Aleph because Ein Mavir and Ala Mitzvahs? What do you mean Ein Mavir and Ala Mitzvahs? Didn't happen in Adar Aleph. Very nice. Reason Makdim. I have a Kash. There's reason Makdim Mitzvahs. So we'll shake the lulav on Rosh Hashanah. Not yet. No. We can't lay in it. We can't shake the lulav on Rosh Hashanah. Because Zriza Makdim L'Mitzvah says when the opportunity is correct, do it on the first available opportunity, but it's not correct to commemorate Purim in Adar Aleph. Doesn't make sense. It didn't happen in Adar Aleph. It happened in Adar Beis. What do you mean Zriza Makdim L'Mitzvah? What do you mean Ein Ma'avir L'Mitzvah? It happened in Adar Beis. What? I mean, yeah, it happened in Nisan, but for whatever reason, we're commemorating when we were saved, which is the Adar, but it wasn't scheduled for Adar Aleph. It was scheduled for Adar Beis. So comes Rabbi Yosef Shol Halevi Natanzan. Now, who's Rabbi Yosef Shol Halevi Natanzan? The Shol Meshiv. And the Shol Meshiv was the Paisik of Lvav. And I'll tell you a little story. I don't know if I ever told her. My grandmother, Alea Shalom, during the Holocaust, was she didn't have a mother, and she was with a woman named Mrs. Natanzan, who was a direct descendant of the Shol Meshiv. And this woman became like an adopted aunt in our family. So this woman, first of all, was a descendant of the Shol Meshiv, and she was also a direct descendant of the Yismach Moshe. And not only that, she saved the Yismach Moshe's gartel from Europe, and she has it in her family. Okay. And if you want that gartel, it's going to cost you a pretty penny. Okay. Be it as it may, he gives the following amazing answer. You ready for the answer of the Shol Meshiv? Again, the kasha is that according to the Yerushalmi, based on the Kavanah Eda and the Pnei Moshe and the Bnei Yissaschar and the Shai Yissaschar, the miracle of Purim happened in Adar Beis. So what's Pshat in Rabbi Yossi that you commemorate Purim in Adar Aleph? Fine. So the Gemara in Masechta Megillah says like this. The Gemara says the following lamdas. The Gemara asks, what's Pshat in Rav Shem Gamliel? The Gemara says Shem Gamliel darshans hashenis, that you're going to keep Purim in Adar Beis. So Gemara says, and what does Rabbi Yossi do with the word hashenis? Listen to this. The Gemara says a chiddush. That hashenis teaches you that at first they decreed to make Purim only in Shushan. And hashenis says they then extended it to everywhere in the world. Look at this Gemara. It's at the end of number 11. The Gemara says, Rabbi Yossi, hi hashenis my avidle. What does Rabbi Yossi do with hashenis? He uses it for the drasha of Shmuel Bar Yehuda. The Amar of Shmuel Bar Yehuda, B'tchila kavuha b'Shushan. At first, they established Purim in Shushan, and after they established it in Shushan, they established it in the rest of the world. The Pashut Pshat in the Gemara is first they established Purim in Shushan, meaning after the Purim story, they established it in Shushan. Let's say like this. As Purim was coming, they made a takana to make it in Shushan. They say, you know what? We're going to make Purim everywhere. A few days later, they made a new decision. Says the Shol Meshiv, that's not the Pshat. In year 1, Purim was only celebrated in Shushan. In subsequent years, they celebrated it everywhere. Now listen carefully. That means in year 1, after the Purim story, only Shushan celebrated Purim. In year 2, everyone celebrated Purim. So Shol Meshiv uses this to give a go'inistic ataras. The kasha was, if in the year of the Purim story, Haman decreed that the Jews should be annihilated in Adar Beis, so what's Pshat in the Shita that holds we commemorate Adar Aleph? Says the Shol Meshiv, who cares about year 1? Who cares about the year of the Purim story? In the year of the Purim story, no one observed Purim anyway, except for the people of Shushan. So we don't, year 1, the fact that it was a Shana Muberes, Yerushalmi says, is irrelevant. Who cares it was a Shana Muberes? Nobody observed Purim then anyway, except for the residents of Shushan. The Iker Purim then was year 2, and year 2 wasn't an Iber Yar. Year 2 was a regular year, and they observed it in Adar. Therefore, Rabbi Yossi says, in subsequent Iber Yars, you're going to observe Adar Aleph. Why? Ein Mavir in Ala Mitzvahs. Meaning, what the Shol Meshiv is doing is, he's saying, yes, the Yerushalmi is correct. Year 1 was an Iber Yar. And yes, Haman decreed to kill the Jews in Adar Beis. So why would we commemorate Adar Aleph according to Rabbi Yossi? Because in year 1 anyway, almost nobody observed Purim. It was only decreed on Shushan to observe Purim. So the Iker Purim is year 2. Year 2 wasn't an Iber Yar. Year 2 was a regular year. And therefore in subsequent years, we're going to commemorate Adar Aleph. That's the go'inus of the Shayal Umeshiv. L'chayra, this go'inus will answer another kasha. There's a Perush on the Sefer Yereim called Sayafos Re'im. You know, the Sefer Yereim was written by a Rishon Rebbe Lezer Mimitz. And the Sayafos Re'im asked a very interesting question. He says, according to the Yerushalmi, that the year of Purim was an Ibriyar, and according to the Karban Ha'eda and the Pnei Moshe, that it was decreed for Adar Beis, then what is the significance of Purim Katan? Purim Katan is meaningless. Why should we commemorate anything on Purim Katan? Nothing happened on Purim Katan. The year of Purim was an Ibriyar. The salvation occurred in Adar Beis. Adar Aleph, nothing happened. They weren't supposed to be harmed and they weren't saved. So why commemorate in subsequent years in Adar Aleph, Purim Katan? Purim Katan has no meaning. In fact, says the Sofos Re'im, we know many Rishonim taka hold it doesn't have meaning. Says the Sofos Re'im, it's a raya to the Rishonim that there's no such thing as Purim Katan. But according to the Shiur Meshiv, we have an answer to that kasha. Because granted in year 1, nothing happened, but we don't care about year 1. In year 1, nobody observed Purim anyway, except for the Bnei Shushan. The Yikar Purim was year 2, and year 2 was a Shana Pshuta. And now the question is, in subsequent years, when to commemorate Purim. So one Shita holds, Ein Ma'avir Nala Mitzvahs, do it year 1. But even the Shita that says commemorate it in the second Adar, would agree to do something in the first Adar, because we don't look at the first year, we look at the second year.
Who cares about celebration? What about the actual salvation?
Nothing
Comes down.
But
why is it a burden celebrating or a burden when the Maisa happens?
According to Shalmesha, we're gonna parallel future years after the first Purim. So what's the first Purim? So you say, come on, it doesn't matter when people celebrate. It matters when we were saved. And we were saved in an Ibriyar of Adar Beis of an Ibriyar. Shalmesha says, no, the Purim in the future is going to follow the first Kaviyus of Purim. The first real Kaviyus of Purim, you can make that case. In other words, could be Rav Shimon Gamliel would say, no, we're going to follow the year of, we're going to follow when the decree was and when the salvation was. But Rav Shimon says, no, we're going to follow the Ikar Kfiyas of Purim, which was year 2. Okay. That's the first approach to the Yerushalmi. Okay, Rabbi Sai? The first way of learning the Yerushalmi is, the Yerushalmi says, the miracle of Purim happened in an Ibriyar, and it was scheduled for Adar Beis. That's approach 1. Tonight, B'siyata D'Shmaya, we're going to learn 4 ways in the Achronim how to read the Yerushalmi. Way number 1 is it happened in Adar Beis. Here's the second way. This, in my mind, is one of the greatest kashas on the Megillah. I never heard anyone ask this question. If you've asked this question, give yourself a pat on the back. If you never asked this question, you kick yourself. How come I never asked this question? Not too hard. So, it's the 13th day of Nisan. Haman makes his lottery, and it comes out on Yud Gimel Adar. And what happens? Mordechai gets wind, and they make a fast day for 3 days, and before they know it, Haman's hanging already. Right? The whole Purim story is 72 hours. The whole thing. The tragedy and the salvation, the whole story is 72 hours. Chazal say the Rebbeinu Shalom doesn't put tzaddikim in distress for more than 72 hours. Fine. So now Haman's dead. Haman's hanging. Crows are coming. They're pecking at his head. They're eating him up. You know, Haman, the raccoons are coming at night. The raccoons that are all over the place, that are the squirrels up there on the ceiling, they're eating Haman. Yeah? I have a question. So now Mordechai could have a field day. I was Mordechai. The next day, Yud Zayin Nisan, we know Haman is dead. Mordechai should send out letters to all the cities that instead of the Jews being killed on Yud Gimel Adar, we're going to kill the enemy. What does Mordechai do when after Haman is killed? Nothing. What does Mordechai do for the rest of Nisan? Nothing. What does Mordechai do in Iyar? Nothing. What does Mordechai do in Sivan? On the 23rd day of Sivan, look at number 14. Number 14 is going to be the topic, I think, Be'ezus Hashem, of the last Shiur before Purim. This Shiur is many, many years in the making. This is the longest pasuk in the whole Tanakh. Number 14. It's the longest pasuk in Tanakh. It has 43 words. Vayikaru Sofrei HaMelech Ba'isahi B'chodesh HaShlishi. The scribes of the king read, at that time, Hu Chodesh Sivan, B'shloisha v'yesrihim, Vayikasef, Chashat Sivan, Mordechai, El Ayudim, that we could kill the enemy. Mordechai, what took you so long? Why'd you wait from Yud Gimel Nisan till Chaf Gimel Sivan? You waited 70 days. 70 days ago, Haman made a decree that that he's going to annihilate the Yidden. This decree is hanging on every Svarim store, on every grocery store, that on the 13th day of Adar, the Goyim are going to kill the Jews. Mordechai, what does he do? As soon as Haman was killed, he should have gone down, ripped down the signs, put up new signs that the Jews are not going to be killed, the Jews are going to kill their enemy. And Mordechai sits by idly and doesn't do a thing until Chaf Gimel Sivan. 70 days later. What's he waiting for? What happened on Chaf?
Asked for the next day to kill.
And she did. Esther killed everyone the next day. So, the next day...
There was no one else to kill already.
No! What do you mean? They're enemies all over the world. No, only in Shushan. In Shushan. But where they should make on the 23rd day of Sivan, Mordechai sent out letters that the Jews will kill their enemy on Yud Gimel Adar. So why did he wait until Chaf Gimel Sivan? What's he waiting for? He should have already made the decree. He should have changed the decree right after Haman was saying, what happened 70 days? What's he waiting for? What happened? What's Chaf Gimel Sivan? This is the best kasha on the whole Megillah. This is the best kasha on the Megillah. What's Mordechai waiting for? It's random. 70 days. Oh, I forgot we're going to be killed in a few months. Yeah, let me change that quickly. What happened? This is the best kasha on the Megillah. Don't try to answer it. You never saw this kasha before, right? This is the best kasha on the Megillah. What's Mordechai? He wakes up in the middle of the year. Oh, right, we're going to be killed. Remember last week we said a random thing. We said Rabbi Glatstein says that the first Rashi in Parak HaMoicher says that doves give birth every month except for Adar. Remember that? We said we had no idea why he says it. I found why he says it in another piece in the Yaros Tavash that will answer this question. Okay, ready? Listen to this. Says Rabbi Glatstein, another kasha. The Yerushalmi that we all know about, because we know a lot of Yerushalmis. The Yerushalmi says Rabbi Glatstein, that the year of the Purim story was in Ibriyar. What? That's impossible. Because there's a halacha in Masechta Brachas, Masechta Sanhedrin. You're not to make an Ibriyar before Rosh Hashanah. You know that? You cannot make an Ibriyar before Rosh Hashanah. In Ma'avir Nes Hashanah Kodim Rosh Hashanah. So you're telling me Haman in Nisan, 6 months of Rosh Hashanah, scheduled it in an Ibriyar? He didn't know it was an Ibriyar. You can't know it's an Ibriyar until after Rosh Hashanah. What do you mean it was an Ibriyar? The Yerushalmi doesn't make any sense. You're now to make an Ibriyar before Rosh Hashanah unless it's a B'Shas HaDchak. So what's the Shas HaDchak over here? Says Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshitz Mamish Ga'oinus. What are the two worst months of the year? Well, one of them we know is Av, right Chaim? Av's a bad month. What's the mazel of Av? An Aryeh, a lion. Lions eat small creatures. Lion eats up. The other worst month of the year is Adar. Adar is also a terrible month. It's the worst month of the year with Av. Because big fish eat little fish. They're the two monsters, the lion and the fish. Aaron was born in Av and he died in Av. Moshe was born in Adar, he died in Adar. They walk into Parai. Parai says, you guys are doomed. Ru'u kira neged penechem. Both of you guys are doomed. Aaron, you're born in Av, you're going down in Av. Moshe, you're born in Adar, that's the month of the fish, you're going to be swallowed up. Adar is the worst month of the year. What are Klal Yisrael compared to? Which bird? Yoina. What can't the Yoina do in Adar? Yoina can't give birth in Adar. Why? To show that Klal Yisrael's mazel in Adar is bad. That's why Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshitz brings up that a Yoina can't give birth in Adar. Klal Yisrael's nimshal al Yoina. And in this month, we're subject to Kishuf. So there's only one way around it. How we get it now? When Haman saw that it came out in Adar, that his lottery fell out in Adar, he was sameach. It's even worse than Av. I'm going to get them. Moshe died in Adar. Aaron was not as great as Moshe, so he died in Av. But in order to knock off a Moshe, you need an Adar. Adar's the big fish. So Haman was happy when it fell out in Adar. So Mordechai is sitting there on Yud Gimel Nisan, and Mordechai says, Oy vay, if Haman made a decree for Adar, we're in big trouble. There's only one way around Haman. We have to make sure that the decree doesn't come out in Adar. How do you do it? Make an Ibriyar. As we said many times, there's no mazel in Adar Beis. Here's the problem. In Ibriyar, Mordechai is qualified because he was a member of the Sanhedrin. Are you allowed to be ma'aber the shana in chutz la'aretz? Avada and avada, as long as there's no bezdin hagadol in Yerushalayim. But there is a bezdin hagadol in Yerushalayim. From the time of Koresh Harishon, there was Chagai, Zechariah, Malachi, Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah. So Mordechai has to send a letter to Chagai, Zechariah, Malachi, Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah. How long does it take if you send out a letter from Yud Gimel Nisan to get to Yerushalayim and back to Paisha? 70 days, of course, from Yud Gimel Nisan to Chav Gimel Sivan. So therefore, Mordechai cannot come up with a plan of how to regain control and destroy our enemy until he received word from Chagai, Zechariah, Malachi that, by the way, it's an Ibriyar this year.
For the first time.
You're now to be Ma'aber the Shan before Rosh Hashanah. It's a Shasat Chak. Otherwise, Haman's going to kill us. That's a Shasat Chak, says Rabbi Yonasan. So Mordechai, even though Haman is dead, he felt that we would not be able to rescind the decree unless he got word that it was an Ibriyar.
Even if it's an Ibriyar, other olives still come first in that year. And then still be other first to
So that means Haman's plan was to kill the Jews in Adar Aleph. But what allowed us to overcome Haman? Making an Adar Beis. So this answers all the kashas. If you want to know why Reb Lezer, Reb Shimon would say, so which month did Purim happen in? We were supposed to be killed in Adar Aleph. We were saved in Adar Aleph. But actually Mordechai scheduled the killing of the enemy to Adar Beis. You hear this? We were supposed to be killed in Adar Aleph. Mordechai made an Ibriyar and he said, no, that's not what Haman meant. He meant Adar Beis. So now there's a big kasha in subsequent years. Which Adar do you commemorate? So Reb Lezer, Reb Shimon says, Ein Ma'avirin ala mitzvah, it's Adar Aleph. Shimon Gamliel says, no, Mismach Gula Lagula. So now, what's the big significance of Purim Katan? Purim Katan has a lot of significance. Because according to Rabbi Yonasan, says Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshitz, when the Yerushalmi says the year that Purim occurred, it was an Ibriyar, it doesn't mean it was supposed to be an Ibriyar. It wasn't supposed to be an Ibriyar. Mordechai made it into an Ibriyar. How could you do it before Rosh Hashanah? It was a Shasat Chak. What's a Shasat Chak? In order to get around the decree of Haman. This is the incredible approach of the Yaros Davash. Mamish Go'inus. And now we know the Yoina. That's the second approach to Yerushalmi.
How does it align with what every year does?
So basically,
In other words, how do you catching up? Was it a year that was
no, it wasn't. Because again, this was in a time in history.
First year that actually was ever?
No. This was a time in history where they mekadesh the year based on Re'iyah, which means they could decide it on a yearly basis. The Gemara says that if, let's say, the roads were muddy, they could at the last second make an Ibriyar. So they were allowed to do that. They could do that. The question is, you can't make it early. B'Shas Chak, you can make it early.
Where does Rashi say this about the Yonah again?
The first Rashi in Bava Basra and Parak HaMoicha. The Yoina does not give birth in Parak HaSvina Daf Pei. Try it at home. You'll see. Okay? Fine. That's the second approach. The third approach is the approach of the Shoel Umeshiv himself, Rabbi Yosef Shaul HaLevi Natanzan, a completely revolutionary way to read the Yerushalmi. You ready? Let's go back to number 1. Rab Levi b'shem Rav Chama bar Chanina Oisa Hashana Hoisa Mubares. That year it was an Ibriyar. My taima, what's the reason? Miyoim liyoim umechodesh l'chodesh neim asar uchodesh Adar. It was a year that Adar was 2 months. And you know which month the Jews were scheduled to be killed? Adar Aleph. Not Adar Beis. Chodesh neim asar, the 12th month, not the 13th month. Karban learns the month next to the 12th. The month that's normally the 12th. Rabbi Yosef Levananza says, Pashib Shan Yerushalmi, it's Chodesh Neim Asar, Adar Aleph. The Gezerah was Adar Aleph. So now the question is, if the Gezerah was Adar Aleph, asked the Shalom Eshev, so what's Pshat in Reb Shimon ben Gamliel that we lay in the Megillah in Adar Beis, but in the year that Purim happened, it was scheduled for Adar Aleph. Hagab Atzmacha. If somebody has Yortzeit, if the Nifter was Nifter in Adar Aleph, you commemorate Adar Aleph. You don't commemorate Adar Beis. So why do we commemorate Purim in Adar Beis? It was scheduled for Adar Aleph. So Rabbi said you should have enough information to answer this question. The Shalom Meshiv himself already said, what? That we don't care about the first year of the Purim story, because nobody was commemorating Purim anyway that year. So that year, Taka was scheduled for Adar Aleph, and only Shushan observed it. But the first real Kviyas of Purim was the second year. Second year was the Shana Pshuta. And after that, it was legislated that which Adar should we use to commemorate Purim? Adar Beis. This is the third pshat in the Yerushalmi. Again, according to this pshat, the Ikar Purim was scheduled for Adar Aleph. Why do we commemorate Adar Beis? Because again, the first year, the Purim, first year doesn't really count because it was only legislated in Shushan. Now I want to tell you, in the Drashos Va'agados Chsam Sofer, you want to say Chidush?
No.
Okay.
If everything already was finished 3 days after the whole business,
Yeah.
the Jews were not in danger anymore.
Well,
Technically, we're not in danger.
the thing is, Ki Kesav Asher Nichtav B'Shem HaMelech Ein Lahashiv. And there was still a document that said that the Goyim were going to kill us on the 13th of Adar. The only way they were able to manipulate that is they just changed the text. But it was still...
Where did they change the text? In the document?
Because the original, the Gra explains, the original document said, it didn't say who kills who. It was very vague. So they were able to explain it, interpret it differently. But we were still in danger until we sealed the deal and got up the courage to kill our enemy. We were in a very tenuous situation. So even though Haman was dead, but you still had the decree looming. So we had to use,
So what did he do on Sivan, the 23rd day?
On the 20, so that's the day that they remanipulated the text of the decree.
And what did they do?
They wrote, instead of the Goyim killing us, we're going to kill them.
Did they?
And we did. But on the third, that's what we did on Purim. You know that holiday? We get dressed up, we wear the hamdash.
I already said before that Esther asked for another day.
That Esther did already Pesach time. That was Pesach time.
Yeah, and who said it was?
No, but the enemies all over the world, that was scheduled, that was legislated on the 23rd day of Sivan to take effect.
The world to kill Goyim?
No, they lived around the world. We lived. Jews in Borough Park, instead of being killed, they killed the enemies. 13th Avenue, 47th Street.
That's what happened over there.
Okay.
That's what a commemoration over there.
So I want to tell you, the Jerusalem Agadas Chsam Sofer, these are the Chidushim Chsam Sofer wrote when he was young. They're considered the very creative Chidushim. He also says a similar approach to the Shalom Meshiv, that he reads Yerushalmi, that it happened in an Ibriyar and it was scheduled for Adar Aleph. Okay. Rabbi say, look at number 21. This is the fourth approach to the Yerushalmi. Shailas Uchuvas Chsam Sofer. If you came now, this is the best part. Okay? So, Shailas Uchuvas Chsam Sofer, Siman Kuf Samach Gimel. So the Chsam Sofer reads, you ready? Zemi, a good Chsam Sofer. Yeah? The Chsam Sofer reads Yerushalmi different than the Karban Aida. Listen to this reading. Similar to the Shalom Meshiv. That the year of Purim was in Ibriyar. And which month? The 12th month, Adar Aleph. Chsam Sofer learns, not like the Karban Aida, that Pashut Pshad in the Yerushalmi it was scheduled for Adar Aleph. So the $1 million question that Chsam Sofer asks, it was scheduled for Adar, and he says, by the way, you know why it was scheduled for Adar Aleph? Because Haman knew that Adar is a good month for the Jews. Why? Because Moshe was born in Adar. And by the way, Rabbi Yaakov Emden says very interesting chiddush. We know that the day of a bris milah is a very special day because it's a day that the heart is open to the Torah. Whose bris was probably the most important bris in history? Somebody who we really needed their heart to be open in the Torah. Moshe Rabbeinu. What day was Moshe Rabbeinu's bris? Purim. What day opened up the heart of Moshe Rabbeinu to give Torah to Klal Yisrael? Purim. Says Rabbi Yaakov Emden, the Chashivas of Purim, it's the Yom HaMilah of Moshe Rabbeinu. It's the day of pouring out of Torah. That's when Moshe Rabbeinu's heart was open to the Torah. So Haman knew, stay away from the day that Moshe was born. That's Adar. Now Moshe was born in...
So a week later, you done.
Moshe Rabbeinu.
14th was Purim.
didn't born in India. He wasn't born in India.
Moshe Rabbeinu, says the Chassam Sofer, was born in Adar Beis. There are different shitas. There are many shitas when Moshe was born, when he had his bris, whether it was an Ibriyar, whether it was not an Ibriyar, whether it was Adar Aleph, Adar Beis. Meaning what we did tonight with the Yerushalmi, we could do with Moshe Rabbeinu, but not this year. No, this year, this is the last year on the Adar Aleph, Adar Beis. But Chassam Sofer learns Moshe Rabbeinu was born in Adar Beis, and Adar Beis is a good omen for Klal Yisrael. However, that's why Haman avoided Adar Beis. He scheduled it for Adar Aleph. Listen carefully. And he scheduled it Adar because Moshe died in Adar. So as long as you're not in the month that Moshe was born, you're going to be subject to the bad omen of the fact that he died in that general time. So Haman scheduled Purim for Adar Aleph. For the $1 million kasha. Then the Yerushalmi doesn't make sense. What's Pshat in Rav Shem Gamliel that we celebrate Purim in Adar Beis? Look at number 21. Shas Chuvas Chassam Sofer, second paragraph. Shuv Matzasi, I found in the Yerushalmi that says the year of Purim was a Shana Muberes. And what month was Purim scheduled? Says the Chassam Sofer, Divrei Yerushalmi, Tzarchi and Gadol. Imkei Nasa Nes Adar Rishon. Uvahakuli Amamoideh, that you should celebrate Adar Rishon. Why does Rav Shimon Gamliel say we celebrate Purim in Adar Beis? But it was scheduled for Adar Rishon. Ready for this? This is Mamish Oyim Anoira. Says the Chassam Sofer, when the Yerushalmi says that the year of Purim was an Ibriyar, it doesn't mean it was an Ibriyar. It means it should have been an Ibriyar and they decided not to. It's the fourth way to read the Yerushalmi. It was supposed to be an Ibriyar, and Haman decreed it for Adar Aleph. And that's Pshat in Rabbi Glatstein, Rabbi Yossi, that we commemorate Adar Aleph. So what's Pshat in Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, we commemorate Adar Beis? That Mordechai said, no way, you're going to schedule it for Adar Aleph. Adar Aleph is a bad month, because Moshe died in Adar, and we can't be protected by the month of his birth. So Mordechai said, I'm canceling the Ibriyar. So this way we'll be protected by the month that Moshe was born. So really, it was scheduled for Adar Aleph, and Moshe canceled the Ibriyar. Mordechai canceled the Ibriyar. So in subsequent years, we could celebrate Adar Beis, because it didn't happen in Adar Aleph. It was supposed to happen in Adar Aleph, but it didn't happen in Adar Aleph. So to me, this is Mamish Oyim V'Noira. You could have one line in the Yerushalmi, and in the Achronim, there are literally 4 completely different ways of learning one line in the Yerushalmi. All the Yerushalmi says is, the year of Purim was an Ibriyar. But what month was Purim scheduled to happen? So let me tell you the 4 shitas, giving you the happy recap. Here are the 4 shitas. Executive summary. Write it down. The first shita is the Karban Ha'edah, and the Pnei Moshe, and the Munkacher, and the Bnei Yissaschar, that it was scheduled for Adar Beis. If it was scheduled for Adar Beis, why would there be a shita of Reb Lezer Rabbi Yossi to commemorate Adar Aleph? And why is there significance to Purim Katan? It's scheduled for Adar Beis. So to that, the Shalom Meshav answers, because we don't really care that much about the first year, because the first year was only for Shushan. That's the first way to read the Yerushalmi.
There is a Purim Katan then.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be in
again, according to this pshat, that's in the Chassam Sofer. Now I'm recapping. Okay, so the
according to that, it's good.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Very good. Yeah. Again, so the first pshat is the Karban Ha'edah Pnei Moshe, that it was scheduled for Adar Beis, and of course it didn't happen, but it was scheduled for Adar Beis. That's the first pshat. Yeah. Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshit says that it was scheduled for Adar. But Mordechai, in order to save the Jews, made it an Ibriyar, and we were scheduled to be killed in one Adar, and Mordechai made an Ibriyar, and we killed our enemies in Adar Beis. So that explains why Adar Aleph has significance. Then you have the Shalom Meshav's way to read the Yerushalmi. It was an Ibriyar, scheduled for Adar Aleph. And then you have the Chassam Sofer's pshat. It was supposed to be an Ibriyar, and the Ibriyar was cancelled. So Rabbi said this should give you crystal clarity in exactly what happened in the original Purim. One thing was for sure, the Yerushalmi says it was an Ibriyar. Whether it was an Ibriyar, the Chassam Sofer says it wasn't. The other 3 Perushim say it was, and if it was, which Adar was it supposed to happen? Karban Ha'edah says Adar Beis. Shalom Eshiv says Adar Aleph, and then Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshitz says the Ibriyar was made in the last second. But the main thing is, Rabbi Isai, we know now why Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshitz bring in the Yoina, Klal Yisrael is Nimshal Yoina. So it's interesting. Even though our mazel changed, now our mazel is good in Adar. But the Yoina, apparently, if a Yoina has a court case, a Yoina would not schedule it in the month of Adar. Yoina still does not have good mazel in the month of Adar. But the good news is, but we do. Rabbi Isai, have a great evening. Shkaya.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.